And hello there, people of the world. You're cool, I'm cool, we're all super cool. Welcome to the channel, Sir Cools a Lot. So as always, I'm on a quest to find the best medicine travel coolers out there. And what better opportunity to test out these products while traveling. So actually I recently did a little holiday to Safari West, which is a really cool kind of safari reservation in Northern California. And what's additionally interesting about this trip is that you can do camping there. And so this was a 2-day trip that included camping and going out on the safari and other kinds of cool things. And so what a grander opportunity this is to actually take some medicine travel coolers with me and test them out in the field, see how they do under various conditions. So for this trip, I actually put the CHETAITAI, the For All Family Voyager, and the RX Mini medication travel coolers to the test, and I put them basically head to head against each other. So all three of these units were essentially running at the same time throughout the trip, and all of these units had temperature data sensors connected to them, so that you can really get to see how these products perform while one is camping. So for the Safari West, actually you do get to spend the night there as well, camping, or glam camping it might be called depending on how you view it. There's a hut that you stay in and stuff, and so I thought this would be quite a nice test run for maybe doing some more adventurous type camping with medicine travel coolers than my usual flair of more business trip like videos. So I hope you enjoy this one. There's a lot of cool stuff to share and lots of data as always, and I really hope that this gives you some extra tips for your travel and adventure purposes. So let's jump on in. So this is just a quick peek at some of the videos and footage you will see today. So pretty much most of the photographs that I took here on my own. There's a couple of stock photos from Safari West, but all of the animal photos and all of the cooler photos and all of that are basically all mine, and then of course all the data is mine as well. So just a heads up on that, I had a lot of fun on this little camping trip, and the animals were beautiful. As always, I have my disclaimer. Basically, I'm independent. I don't have sponsorship. All my data is my own. All my views are my own, and I'm just really on a quest to find the best medicine cooler travel products that are out there for my needs, and then sharing them with you along the way. So let me just give you an overview of what the Safari West adventure, let's call it that, looks like. So as you know, I live in the Bay Area. So basically driving to Safari West in Santa Rosa is about a 2-hour, give or take traffic, road trip. So you kind of, each way is about 2 hours. Then the Safari West is a reservation. It has a massive acreage with lots of animals and other cool stuff, and you can basically stay there overnight or for a couple of nights depending on what your interests are in these sort of camping huts. They're basically tents that are on wooden stilts, and they're quite nicely decked out. They have sort of cozy cabin-like bedroom furniture within them, but they are basically tents. And so I figured, hey, what a nice opportunity to do some more adventurous testing with medicine coolers while I'm at it. So the compilation of this video there's about 3 days of work that went into this video in terms of testing the coolers, collecting all of the data, and then after the trip it took me kind of a few hours to compile this presentation for you, assemble all of the data, export it from the probes and stuff, and compile it and so on. So I hope you get something out of this, and I hope you get to enjoy the the photography that I took as well while I was there. So yeah, let's keep on going. So this is what the hut or safari hut looks like that they have at the Safari West. So of interest to those who have medicine coolers, well, first of all, there's no fridge, so just keep that in mind. You're kind of camping, basically. I was pleased to see that the hut did actually have a couple of power outlets on the floors around the hut, so I've put a picture in there for you to see. So I guess if you bring your own portable fridge or whatever, you know, you can sort of plug that in and put it to good use. You're basically left with the elements protected by the tent. The hut did have a small kind of heater that you could kind of move around, but it wasn't it wasn't something substantial. And then each of the beds had a sort of a heat blanket that was provided, so you could kind of stay cozy as long as there was electricity. You can already kind of see to the right there the 3 coolers that we're going to be testing. So actually they're sort of in position. Basically, this is where I left them for most of the trip. I just sort of positioned them in the tent and let them run, and basically just wanted to see how they would do. And I was quite keen to see how they would do overnight, because I was told that the temperatures would drop into the low 60s, maybe even the 50s Fahrenheit, and so I was kind of intrigued to sort of see how that might play out. Now, one thing to note, although this is a live trip, I actually did not test these coolers with live medicine. So when I'm doing more extreme cooler testing, I will not risk my own medicine at this point. This is more to give me information on the operating boundaries that I will have for when I actually do travel with live medication. So just a heads up on that. These coolers actually are just loaded with temperature probes, which I will show you in a minute, and they have no live medicine. So let's keep on going. So this is a video to give you a kind of a more sort of 3D feel for what the hut looks like. So there you can see the 3 coolers that are in position. I basically parked them next to one of the power sockets that was on the floor. Fortunately, I'd also brought a couple of power adapters with me, so I could plug in multiple kind of USB-C type plugs. And then here you can sort of get an idea of what the hut looks like, the little balcony that you have, and sort of the surroundings. You basically have a sort of a view of the Safari West reservation. It's kind of cool. I had there was a llama pen right in front of the hut that we were in. I really love the fireplace that was just down the road, so I included a picture of that fire pit. It was super cool, and at night they had it all set up for marshmallows and s'mores and cool stuff. So it was really quite a cozy experience. It was raining a lot though, so I guess it depends on the time of year. So let's keep on going. The other part to this is during the daytime on Tuesday. So we arrived on the Monday, we stayed overnight, and then on Tuesday we went on a 3-hour safari tour. My original plan for the safari tour was to actually take the 3 medicine coolers with me. However, what happened on the Tuesday was it started to pour rain quite heavily, and I didn't want to get the coolers basically kind of wet, rain damaged. And so rather than taking the coolers with me on the safari tour, what I did was I moved them to my car, and I let them sit there basically all day in the back seat of my car. So you can kind of see them here. They're in basically a simple box to kind of make sure that they don't fall or whatever. But rather than taking them on the direct 3-hour safari tour and risking them getting damaged and wet, I basically put them in my car that was parked at the Safari West reservation. So little side note on that. But the video that I just showed sort of shows that the parking area, and you can kind of see how that looks. But for temperature experience and other things, I think it's pretty reasonable, because sitting in a car, whether it's cold or hot, will reflect what happens to those coolers during the day. So yeah, let's keep on going, and let me show you more. So of course, while I'm at it, may I just take a moment to share with you some beautiful animal photography. So here you can see mummy rhino and her little baby here, very protective of her. The dad is actually in the rhino pen next to them. They had to separate them because they can get very territorial and aggressive when there is a little baby, apparently, and they will end up fighting with each other if the pen is not big enough, which in this case it wasn't. And so they unfortunately had to separate the dad into the neighboring pen, but they can sort of see each other, and so on and so forth. But anyway, this was a kind of a cool and a beautiful sight to see. I really enjoyed this one. Some other photographs, you've got the classic ostrich. What a strange bird, a bird that can't fly. How about that? I guess evolution does strange things. And here you can see some of the wildlife that you get to experience as you kind of go around the reservation. Very, very beautiful animals. Note the shape of one of the horns. Kind of interesting to see that, a straight horn and a curved horn. Apparently that's nothing more than genetics. It's just the way it came out. So let's keep on going. And just a few more for you here. Some beautiful photography of the wildlife. We saw loads of cool stuff, but I just wanted to give you a taste of what you might get to see if you do the Safari West experience. Had a great time. Okay, now back to business, the coolers. So what I have here is just a quick sort of still photo and then a video showing you how I set this experiment up in terms of the sensors. So each cooler basically has 2 probes. I use SwitchBot probes for the coolers. So to give you an idea of what the temperature is on the lower side of the container and the upper side of the container. So each cooler has 2 probes basically, and then on top of that I also have a couple of probes that I'll show in a minute that I was using for ambient temperature. So basically the idea is I'm just going to collect continuous data throughout this entire trip, and then see how this sort of plays out at the end in terms of the temperature inside the cooler, and hopefully the goal is that it stays between 36 and 46 Fahrenheit. So as you're hearing this, are you already able to predict what you might expect now that you've seen a couple of different videos here between the CHETAITAI, the 4-all family, Voyager, and the RxCoolers Mini? One thing to mention, so for the CHETAITAI, although you probably should know by now that you can adjust the temperature for this experience, I left it in the default setting, which is basically 5 degrees centigrade, and so I didn't dial in any custom temperatures for this. So just keep in mind that whatever you see for the CHETAITAI, it may have a slight edge over the other products because you can lower the temperature or increase the temperature if you wanted to. But anyway, as I said, for this run, I left everything as default. Let's keep on going. This is a little bit more complicated to explain, but I will give it my best, and I thought a visual would help just so that you understand how I approach the power, sort of the power management, the battery electrical management. So we arrived at Safari West on Monday, and so on the Monday night, I actually didn't have the coolers running on the drive out. What I did was I turned them on when we arrived. I've already kind of got a lot of data on, the coolers while we're driving and stuff like that, so I didn't think it was worthwhile. And by the way, these 3 particular units are units that I typically use for my live travel, so they're not from my testing inventory. So I'm generally very, very cautious about not pushing my travel units too far when I'm doing stuff. But this was important because I wanted to test out how good my actual units are for a more adventurous trip, so that I can essentially use them for a adventurous trip when I next want to take one, if that sort of makes sense. So I wanted to make sure that they could really do the job that I needed them for. Okay, so in terms of power management, so we arrived on the Monday, I guess afternoon, evening, and I switched them on, I guess around 3 or 4 p.m. or something like that. And then when I switched them on, I plugged them in. So they were connected to the battery, but the battery was plugged into the wall, so it was continuously charging. And so I left them in that state from Monday night all the way to Tuesday morning. Then on Tuesday morning, around 9:30 a.m., I unplugged them from the wall and I left them running on the battery. And originally the idea was our appointment to go on the safari tour was at 10 a.m. and I was going to take them with me and basically just let them run until the battery drains or dies, and then just to see how long they would essentially last in a head-to-head kind of battle. Because it was raining so much, this was at the point where rather than taking them on the safari, I actually just put them in the back of my car seat and just basically let them run continuously until the battery depleted. Now, each of my batteries is specifically numbered, so that, in this case, these battery sets were numbered 1, 3, and 5. I've got a whole collection of these batteries. It was just luck of the draw which ones I pulled out of my travel box. The extra thing that I did was, because I was putting these coolers head to head in a how long can they last kind of experiment, after I got back home on Tuesday evening-ish, and once the batteries had basically fully drained to 0, I let the batteries recharge to 100, and then I switched out, I sort of changed the position of which battery was being used for which cooler. And so I used the battery that lasted the longest with the cooler that didn't last the longest, and so on and so forth. So I sort of switched all the batteries out just to make sure that the batteries weren't somehow influencing the results of the performance of the cooler, if that sort of makes sense in a long-winded way. Okay, so that's kind of the totality of the sort of the experimental setup. And then finally, just so you can get a closer look of the sensors, here are the 6 SwitchBot sensors that I was using. So these are all numbered, and then to the left there you can see the 2 Tempify sensors, and then also more recently a subscriber introduced me to a sensor called a tempo disc temperature sensor, and I was over the moon actually by discovering this product because it's so small. Look at the size of it. This is the little thing here on the far left. Let me get my mouse going here. Can you see this? So this is the tempo disc. So I've put this into play with my experiments just to see how it performs, if it performs well, and so on. And if it does perform well and maintains good calibration and other stuff like that, I will probably start using it for my live trips, because it's such a cool but small kind of device, and it's obviously much smaller than the Tempify Pro, which can be a little bit too bulky for some of the smaller medicine coolers products that are out there. So anyway, just wanted to introduce you to this new technology that I've added to the menu. So thank you for the tip there. Love all the stuff that's coming in from the subscribers. I'm learning so much. Okay, so let's keep on going. So this is just sort of to recap the positions of the coolers in the different conditions. So as I said, while I was at the hut, basically I just let them sit there on the floor by one of the power outlets, and then here you can see the 3 temperature, the 2 Tempifies and those probes that I just mentioned, they're just sitting outside. They're going to measure the ambient temperature, and then of course inside the coolers we got the SwitchBot, and then here you can see the coolers just sitting on the back of my the back of my car basically. And then finally, this is at home, that final leg where I reversed which battery was powering which cooler, just to get that finishing data set on the whole story. So this mat here is actually a fireproof mat that the coolers are sitting on. I try and be careful of not somehow having a too big of a fire hazard with all these kind of batteries around the house. So alert tip on that one: don't cause a fire with all your batteries. All right, let's keep on going. So this is basically the money, I guess, the money shot. This is the data. So let me walk you through this. So you can sort of see 3 quadrants of information. So you've got the overnight camping zone here. You've got battery part 1, which was on the Tuesday, and then sort of battery part 2 test, which was on the Wednesday, where I switched out which battery was powering which unit. The black line is for the most part the ambient temperature, and also this little grey line is the ambient temperature. Now let me scroll back just a moment, and as I mentioned, so the tempo disc is this new technology, this new probe that I started testing out. So let me scroll forward quickly, and so here that tempo disc actually is this sort of silvery kind of grey plot. So it actually did really well. It almost mirrored the Tempify probe. There seemed to be a slight shift at times, but I think the mistake that I had made with this probe was I'd left it in the box that it came in rather than letting it sit there out in the environment. So I think it was a little bit dampened from being able to measure the like-for-like same temperature, but it actually did really well in terms of its ability to measure the temperature. So I was very, very, very happy with this technology. I'm definitely going to be traveling with this one on my next trip to put it to a full test. Heads up, I've got a 3-week trip coming up in January, by the way, so that's not going to be too far away. Okay, so the black plot's the ambient temperature. So you can sort of see that at the beginning we're in the 70s, and then actually as we camped overnight, interestingly enough, the temperature went down to about 59, 58 degrees Fahrenheit. So it got pretty cold, and then as the sun came up and as we were messing around putting the heating on, it kind of warmed up. And then here, this big sort of peak of temperature, this was when we were basically driving back home on Tuesday from the camping. And so the car then gets kind of much nicer and warmer as it goes up into the 80s. And then we're back home, and then our house is kind of sitting at a cool 70-ish, maybe a little bit lower for the most part. So in terms of the cooler performances, well, spoiler alert. So first of all, none of the coolers had any excursions below 36 or above 46. So they all held up super well. So I'm super happy to see this, because these are my live travel coolers at the moment. So I would have been extremely nervous to see something different. But it's just always great to see that. But now there are some noticeable differences between the coolers, and so I think this is the part that you will find maybe intriguing or interesting. So the green plot is the RxCoolers Mini, the blue plot is the 4-all family Voyager, and then the orange plot is the CHETAITAI. For most of these data plots, there are actually 2 plots, but they mostly overlay each other. So one is for the lower position of the probe in the container, and one is for the upper. There's always about a 1 to 2, maybe 3 degrees separation between the two, but very, very minor, almost not noticeable. But at all positions within the container, you can see that the temperature is essentially below that 46 mark, which is fantastic. The RxCoolers Mini is the one that ran closest to the 46. At times it was at like 45.5, 45.9, different things like that. So it really kind of skirted the line with some of the different ambient temperature conditions. And then the 4-all family Voyager, interestingly enough, was the one that had, and I've noted this one a few times, it has the widest sort of oscillation or cycle of switching on and off. So as you know, all of these units will oscillate between being on and off as they maintain a mean temperature, or maintain a temperature about of a mean. So they sort of cool down to 36, switch off, they warm up to about 42, 43, switch back on, and so on. So they kind of sort of oscillate on and off, and it's sort of a little bit of a trick for power savings management. The CHETAITAI has a much tighter oscillation window, so it maintains a much tighter control of the temperature than the 4-all family Voyager does. But I think there's a price to pay for that, which we've talked about before, but you can very obviously see it here, and I will explain that in a moment. Other things you can notice was, as I said, as you get to much lower temperatures or much higher temperatures, those pellet to plate type cooling systems will lose their efficiency or their ability to cool. And so I was first of all very impressed to see that you could go down to 59 degrees Fahrenheit ambient temperature wise, and these 3 cooling units would basically just about skirt the line of staying below 46, or a little bit more comfortably if it was the 4-all family Voyager or the CHETAITAI. So, but I was very happy to see that they still held pretty well, even though the temperature was quite low. Now note here how when we get back in the car and start driving home, and the car warms up to a more comfortable 78, maybe just shy of 80 kind of Fahrenheit, you can now see that they become a little bit more efficient as cooling units. And look, you can even see how they all drop down in temperature a little bit. So that's sort of, very obvious and noteworthy here. Now also keep in mind that we are going head to head here. So the CHETAITAI, the 4-all family Voyager, and the RxCoolers Mini were all running at the same time in the same ambient environment. And so now you can get to see really how each of these performs in an apples to apples kind of situation. So this is hopefully a very interesting video for you to sort of see. The last thing that I'm going to mention is the batteries. So now you can start to see an interesting difference. The RxCoolers Mini clearly outperforms the others in terms of the amount of energy it consumes on a battery and how long it lasts. And then the 4-all family Voyager does pretty well overall, but not quite as good as the RxCoolers Mini. And then now the CHETAITAI, you can see that it was the poorest performing in terms of how long it lasted on a battery. Now don't get I don't know what the right word is, but don't get too distracted by this, because the CHETAITAI lasted 12 hours from battery start to drain. So just keep in mind that that's still a pretty impressive number. And I actually have a table on the next slide that has all the more specific data. And then of course, just to be sure, I switched out the different batteries to make sure it wasn't the battery that was creating this different effect, and the trend is identical. The CHETAITAI is the worst performing on the battery, even with the battery that yielded the best result in the previous test, and then the 4-all family Voyager, and then the RxCooler. So you can kind of see a second run there of how these coolers perform, and then how long they last on the battery. And then of course, once the battery dies, the temperature goes back to ambient pretty quickly. So that's what these sort of little sort of graph curves essentially are representing. When I switch the coolers on, I switch them on from ambient and let them cool down. So you can also get a little bit of an idea of how long it takes to get a cooler to cool all the way down to the cooling temperature. And then, of course, once that you lose power, you can just see as well how quickly a cooler will go back to ambient temperature. Essentially, because these are USB coolers, and they have that pelleter plate, the energy transfer will be very quick once you switch off the power. All the heat will will blow in or blow out depending on how you view that. And so that USB cooler lid is not a good insulator. So side tip, if your USB cooler does fail on you or you lose battery power, you want to very quickly switch out the lid for the thermoflask lid, which is highly insulated. So just something to sort of think about. Okay, so the final sort of data slide that I have for you really. So this is the battery story. So quite a lot going on here, but the quick version, if you want to pause this, is I've got the timestamp of when we switched the units onto battery, and then the timestamp when the battery basically depleted to 0. And then, of course, then I've got the how many hours had passed on battery basically before it died, and so you can sort of see the data set. And then the first row here is for the CHETAITAI, the middle row is the 4-All Family Voyager, and the bottom row is for the RxCoolers Mini. And then you can see which battery number was used for which test. So in the first test, the CHETAITAI got battery number 5, Voyager 1, RxCoolers Mini 3. And then in the second round, the CHETAITAI got battery number 3, the 4-All Family Voyager got battery number 5, and then the RxCooler Mini got battery number 1. So as you can see, the CHETAITAI, regardless of batteries, lasted about 12.5 hours, which is pretty darn good. The 4-All Family Voyager incredibly lasted around about 20 and a half to 20 hours, so around about 20 hours. And then the RxCoolers Mini was the most impressive. It almost lasted nearly a day to just past a day, depending on which battery you used. So you could see that there was a slight difference of performance or efficiency depending on how you view it between the batteries. So battery 5 was, let's call it the worst performing in terms of efficiency capacity, and battery 1 was the best, but it was very marginal. But you could actually, from the data set, detect a slight sort of difference in performance. But that's fine. You can kind of account for this now in the story. The CHETAITAI, as I said, has a much tighter temperature window than the 4-All Family Voyager. You know, that oscillation where it cycles on and off, and I think that's really what it comes down to in terms of why the CHETAITAI consumes so much more power and energy than the Voyager one. It's basically cycling on and off much more aggressively, and so it's essentially just burning up more power to achieve its goal. And so the 4-All Family Voyager does seem to be very delicately programmed and balanced to be able to get maximal battery efficiency out of its temperature oscillation cycle. So it's a super impressive unit, and it's quite cool to sort of see all of these coolers in a head-to-head apples kind of sort of situation. So I haven't done this one before, so I was quite excited to be able to see that. If you're also curious, there's another data set here, which is the milliamps discharge per hour. So if you wanted to sort of standardize the hourly sort of milliamp consumption of each unit, so here you can see that for each hour, the CHETAITAI was essentially burning 1,632 milliamps. And so if you have a 20,000 milliamp hour battery, you would basically burn that battery in 12.25 hours. The 4-all family Voyager burns around 975 milliamps per hour, so much more, about half as efficient as the let me say that differently. The CHETAITAI is about twice as inefficient as the 4-all family Voyager when you sort of think about that. And then the RxCoolers Mini seems to be the most efficient. So this one burning 840-ish milliamps per hour. So kind of cool to see. And then, you know, very, very similar kind of numbers regardless of battery and regardless of which run. Though noticing here that you can detect that battery number 1, when it's in use, does perform slightly better than the other ones. So that's kind of how I figured that out. So yeah, so that's kind of really the end of my story for today. I thought you might find that interesting. I haven't done a proper head-to-head, apples-to-apples live comparison between my favorite coolers, actually. So these, I would call these 3 coolers my favorite coolers for various reasons. The 4-all family Voyager is very reliable, very sturdy, very steady, great temperature control. The RxCoolers Mini is a much smaller, more compact version, which is great for 1-week trips but delivers equally impressive results. And then finally the CHETAITAI, although it's not as efficient as the other 2 units, the added edge that it has is that you can change the temperature controls, so you can adjust the temperature. And as I noted, I did not do that in this particular video. I just left it in default, so it does have that extra edge. So that's all I got. That's a wrap for me. Have a wonderful week, and till my next video, have a good one.